Welcome back to the Opposition podcast, where we have had off for a while because the rumors, Rukshan, we have to confront them. They were true. You and I, we had a little bit of a falling out because I heard that you were a Zionist, so I cut you off. But since
you cut me off because I'm a Zionist.
But then I saw your reporting as usual, and you seemed pretty fair to both sides. So I've welcomed you back into your own studio. Thanks for joining us, Rukshan.
Bit of banter there, guys. Look, we are coming back after a bit of a break. I think last podcast we did was about a month and a half ago.
More. It was right before I jetted off to Israel.
No, we did one while you were in Israel.
I did. Yeah. Yes.
During the Voice.
Oh, the Voice was the last one.
The Voice one was the last one. So it's good to be back before the end of the year, and we will be continuing these podcasts come the new year as well. So we'll have some announcements around that, I guess. But we just wanted to kind of ensure that you guys know that we're still doing this. There's a few reasons why this didn't happen, and it's not the reasons that Avi says. We haven't had a falling out like he claims.
We will by the end of
tonight. We will by the end of today, possibly. And look, it's been a very interesting time, Avi, covering the news that's happening around the world, covering the news that's happening in Australia. Obviously, there's a few different issues that we're having where communities has different views. Sometimes journalists have different views. You and I have different views. And today's topic that we're going to be talking about and our guest is going to be looking at these type of issues as well, because as we know, with all the conflicts which are happening in Israel, Israel-Palestine, the issues and the conflict in Gaza, we've had a lot of protests happening in Australia, in Melbourne, in Sydney, and very early on, I think it was October the
9th. So
9th.
2 days after the initial horrific attack, before any response from Israel, because I think the context is quite important there. But before we actually get to that, let's just do housekeeping, because you haven't done this for a while. I can tell that.
Actually, yeah, I'm very rusty. I'm getting straight into it, but we should do some housekeeping.
So housekeeping, firstly, want to welcome people on Instagram. This is the first time we've been able to stream to Instagram as well, although it does look a little bit shonky. So if you want to see it properly, you might need to go to theopposition.show. We might try fix that for next time. At the moment, it's got it in like a reel.
Yeah, it's put it in a reel mode, which is like Instagram's just made this feature available worldwide where you can actually do these multi-live streams that we're doing on YouTube and stuff. So we can put that on Instagram now, which is great. But obviously it's showing it up as a reel and cutting off our faces.
Now, people want to comment. People have questions. Where do they do that?
Look, best place to comment is on any of the YouTube platforms. Well, so Avi's YouTube, my YouTube. Or
not because we like
Facebook.
YouTube, but because
that's kind of integrated with the platform that we're using. So those comments come through to us and we can monitor some of these comments. But again, everything's a bit rusty. First episode back. Let's see how we go. But we will be checking out for the comments. Just make sure if you are writing a comment, put question at the start or a question mark, something like this, so we can identify it as being a question that you're directing towards us and not just something you're talking about amongst yourselves in the comments.
And be prepared. I've really got to pick you up at the moment. You've lost the game. Be prepared to also, if you do comment there, that your comment will be displayed on the screen. So.
That's right. So your comment will be displayed on the screen. Whatever emoji or avatar or whatever you're using, your photo might end up on our screen. So I'm just letting you guys know up front. So thanks for picking up on that, Avi.
All right, back to the story, because this is an insane story, I think, and that's why I believe it was so important to come back early. We weren't planning to do another one this year. We were planning to pick it back up from next year, but we decided to do this one because this story is insane. Tell us the backstory.
Well, the backstory is obviously October 9th, you were saying, after the 2 days after the attacks, there was a few protests around the country, and in Sydney, I think the Opera House was the premier had said it would be lit up in the colors of the Israeli flag, and as a way for the community to get together and mourn what had happened. Now, during that time, there were a few protests organized by the Palestinian community as well. I think from if memory serves me correct, it originally started at the town hall, but a group. An offshoot of that initial protest or whatever you want to term it as, rally, ended up at the Sydney Opera House. And then we had this video being shared online which showed a chant. And that chant was "Gas the Jews," which is quite inflammatory for a lot of different reasons. But that chant, was heard across the world. Many places around the world, many outlets, many social media users, very initially early on, shared that video. I think it's had about 6 million views since that time. So, that's really kind of set up a lot of the arguments and debates around protests and what type of actions or words can be said by people. I think New South Wales police were going to act on that and ban some of these protests early on. So obviously that raises many questions also around anti-Semitism, and today in our society we're discussing the rise of anti-Semitism amongst all these other things that we're discussing as well. So that is the backdrop. But since that time, obviously we have come to a scenario where that's been fact-checked by Crikey, and I don't know if any other outlets, I think
no
RMIT
ABC ran the fact check as well of what's her name, Latouf
yeah,
and Cam Wilson. So it's been run again, but basically using their article.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, one of the issues I guess that's come up is what are these fact checks based on? And a lot of the contention seems to be around was this said at all in the first place? And just today, before we came, there was another fact check done on this same thing, and that's raised even more questions. So a lot of this podcast today, we're going to be investigating around this particular topic, and really understanding why we're having this discussion in our community, what's the importance of this discussion. And our guest that we're bringing on today is actually going to help us navigate this as well, because he is at the center of this, him and his association. So I think that'll give us some insight and give them an opportunity to respond as well to what's happening here.
Dr. David Adler, president of the Australian Jewish Association, my personal favorite Jewish association in Australia, not because of their conservative leanings, just because they are an awesome looking bunch of men. Welcome, David.
Look, thank you, Rushkin and Avi. And I know you in your intro, you said things were a bit rusty, so you found a rusty guest for this evening. So it all seems to fit on theme.
So, David, from your perspective, let's start from the beginning and of this particular story, and then we'll move on to the broader issue that it essentially highlights.
Sure.
How did this video end up online?
Well, there were a number of people down at the Opera House, including an incognito young guy that we know who was recording things on his mobile phone. And we we distributed some of the video. So that was, I think, a Monday evening, the 9th of October, when the rally occurred from the town hall to the Opera House. And the point needs to be made that the Opera House, as Rushkin alluded to, was to be lit up in blue and white colours as a sort of a commemoration for those victims of the horrific terrorist event. But the Jewish people, the Jewish community, were warned to stay away from the city. We were warned to stay away from the town hall area and from the Opera House area specifically. So already that is saying something about the nature of the event. The police must have had some information that it was not going to be a safe event. It was not going to be just an ordinary protest, and our community was advised to stay away. So we got a bit of video sent to us the next day, and we made no alteration to the video other than to put a warning statement up the front and our logo out the back, and we put it onto social media. And it took off. Obviously, the contents were very dramatic. There were a couple of different chants on that video, and it was clearly a matter of great public interest. There were horrific displays of anti-Semitism. One Jewish guy who did turn up at the town hall and had an Israeli flag was basically taken away for his own safety.
Arrested, if I recall. They. This is a technicality I've been through a couple of times with Victoria Police. They detain you for your safety, but
Exactly.
in the eyes of the court, just so the viewer out there understands, there's actually no technical difference between being arrested or detained. If they are saying you're not free to go, you are under arrest. Go on.
Yeah. So that was the situation, that there were non-peaceful things happening. There was a fire lit and an Israeli flag was burned. There were flares. There were flags of various sorts, including flags that you would normally associate with extremist jihadist organisations. Basically, with the Jewish people told to stay away and these things happening, the city was handed to the mob, which raises some interesting law enforcement issues as well.
Now, do you mind, David, if I just play that video just to give a bit of context to
Please.
people because we actually have access to some of this raw footage.
And this is the raw footage, unedited, because I think what's important here is almost what are we, December? It was 2 months later. Crikey does the fact check. So this Cam Wilson and this Latouf that we can talk about in a second, they did this fact check, claiming that the audio was edited. That was the first fact check.
Yeah. So from my reading of that original fact check, it was alluding to the fact that the entire thing was created. The audio was added. Someone even, I think, said by AI.
Yeah, you couldn't see the mouths.
You couldn't see the mouth. There was all types of claims.
So that
made
was
in
the initial fact check.
That's the initial fact check.
Then, David Adler, you provided that you got a hold of the entire unedited, not even with the captions on there, from the person that filmed it, and this is what we're seeing now. Correct?
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're going to play now. A bit of that video. Let's just play that 1 second. Make sure the audio is working.
Really?
Stupid people, man. That's the problem.
All right, that we can kind of go over that footage properly, but that kind of gives a bit of the context to what's being discussed, and gives people a bit of a view into what the atmosphere was like, at least. And obviously, there's very clear indications of some of the things which are being said, and the contention is now around the fact that whether gas the Jews was said. That's what these fact checks are centered around.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but remember, I think we've got to play it chronologically.
Yes.
About a week ago, they came out with the original fact check.
Yes.
Which claimed that the audio was manipulated. Then it was proven that it wasn't manipulated because we've seen the whole video uncut with no captions at all.
Yep.
Now Yeah,
I mean, if you mean by manipulated that there was some fabrication, that there was some artificial intelligence, I can tell you that at our end there was zero of that. There is nothing fabricated by us at all in those videos. We wouldn't even know how to do that. So what you just played then is the absolutely raw, unedited video as we received it. We didn't actually take it, but we received it, and we have assurances that there has been no alteration at all in that content that you showed.
and when that came out, plus on top of that, there are, I believe, 4 eyewitnesses who all say they heard it, who have all given statutory declarations to police. Is that right?
There are four that have given statutory declarations. There are about seven witnesses, one of whom has made a statement on video, which can be found on the AJA social media, either Twitter or Facebook, where that person says that she heard the words gas the Jews. So we do have multiple witnesses. We are reliant on the witnesses as to what they said, because officials of our organisation were not present. We received the video and we spoke to witnesses who were there, multiple witnesses, to get their account of what the words were.
So, following that fact check, following the fact that you guys provided then the entire unedited version of the video, they've walked it back and they've changed their fact check. But before we get there, I think it's important to go through Latouf's Instagram. We've got all those posts. I think show everything that happened in between before we hit the change of the fact check, because the fact check itself has changed now. It's gone from it was manipulated to you're hearing it wrong. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think let's just, for people that haven't been following it, let's go through those tweets and her video response, her video, because I think there's some major gaslighting happening by the so-called fact checkers here.
Yeah, and I'll just pull up the original article from Crikey. So first up, they had viral footage showed protesters chanting "Gas the Jew." Nobody can verify it. Edited videos from the Australian Jewish Association promoted global outrage, but further evidence from sources other than the group has not emerged. So this is how it started. The original fact check was the fact that Crikey couldn't access the source footage, so therefore it could not be verified. Which, yes, I understand why they might be saying it this way, but typically this is not how it's done, because you could do that for any video. Any outlet could say, well, I don't have access to the original footage myself as my outlet, so therefore it can't be verified.
Exactly.
That's kind of how it started out. And attached to that from the authors of this,
well, they're saying nobody can verify it.
Nobody can verify
which is a blatant lie, because it's just nobody at Crikey can verify it. And within the article, so that implies that it's fabricated at that point.
At some level.
Yeah.
So I'll play the accompanying.
Well, I think scroll down a bit, because it's funny what she says. The way that they say is essentially can't be verified because AJA wouldn't answer her emails or calls or requests. That Dr. David Adler. I tend to ignore a lot of journalists, but I don't know why you're doing it. Why did you not answer Miss how do you pronounce her name? Antoinette? I don't know.
Antoinette Latouf?
I'm gonna get back. Latouf, I think it is.
We've seen some of her material on social media, highly critical of Israel, very pro-Palestinian. This is not a person who, in our assessment, would form a balanced approach. In fact, much more likely to be hostile. We're not accountable to Crikey.
Crikey's not accountable to Crikey.
Where did that arise? But we have provided it to multiple media outlets, the original one, and subsequently, recently, to Sky News. Shari Markson is possibly one of the best investigative journalists in this country, and she said on her show, when she played the same footage that you showed, but Sky put their own captions on it, that it was unequivocal, that it should put to the end of the doubt what the content was. So that's a matter of public record as well. Alex Rivchin, the co-CEO of the Executive Council of Australian Jury, has said publicly that everyone knows that "Gas the Jews" was said. And interestingly, as Rushkin commented early, a number of media organisations around the world have used the video. And do you know how many have raised concerns that there might be something untoward? Exactly zero. None. And we're talking about big organisations like Fox in the US or Reuters. So
They're not
relying,
they're not as thorough as Crikey. That's all that is.
Well,
of
what I
course,
find interesting is, regardless of the video and even after viewing the raw footage now and stuff, just going back to that time, following the reporting of this and following the fact that this was a major news story around the world, organizers and people affiliated with these protests and people who were there were condemning these groups who were acting out at these protests. So there was that element as well. It wasn't like denial, like this didn't happen.
Yeah, they weren't. The organisers themselves from these protests weren't denying it.
Yeah.
It's Crikey's gone out of its way. And I think it's important to remember, you've got to look at, I think you're kind of kind the way you frame it, David, because you're a lot more diplomatic than I am. But Latouf has a long history, and also I think we can, I think when we get into that article that breaks down her response, he kind of touches on it, is her background also needs to be bought into it, especially because she does, she attacks Shari Markson for a similar but opposing reason, for the same reason, as in she's not, she claims that Shari is not a, what's the word we're looking for? That she has some sort of an opinion on the matter, and she can't be taken as somebody that's, and Latouf is exactly the same the other way. We'll see that in a minute. But Cam Wilson is also a far left-wing extremist blogger. And I've had a bunch of run-ins with him. That guy's obsessed with taking down any conservative and many Jews. He hates Israel, and he'll do whatever he can to manipulate a story so it suits his agenda. And he's done that on numerous things. We've caught him out a number of times. In fact, even Media Watch, even the left-wing Media Watch, which Paul Barry? Paul Barry owns shares in Crikey, has pulled up Cam Wilson for fake news in the past. And I think that he specifically went and teamed up with Latouf. I'm just speculating here because, one, he wanted to give himself some legitimacy. Also, when you're punching down at a minority, you need another minority to legitimize it. Pretend it's not an Arab one that has their own potential personal reasons to do it. But let's go into her response after the raw footage was shown. Correct.
This is before. This is the original response.
Oh, her original response. Okay.
Yeah.
Remember the video where protesters were heard chanting "Gas the Jews" that went viral? It purported to show pro-Palestinian protesters in Sydney chanting "Gas the Jews." Horrific. Truly horrific. If it were true. So stay with me as I explain why there are serious questions around the veracity of this video, and more importantly, some serious silence from authorities. So this video was posted by the Australian Jewish Association with their logo included. It was posted on X at 8:58 a.m. and it has this opening graphic. Prepare to be shocked. Muslim mob of hundreds chant "Gas the Jews, F the Jews" at the Sydney Opera House, 9th of October 2023. A quick aside, organisers say attendees were diverse in age, religion and ethnicity. But anyway, moving on. The video features a series of wide shots, several edit points with different angles, as you can see here, and it's all of the back of the crowd. It has also been captioned, note, "Gas the Jews" and "F the Jews" are in speech marks, and the final video frame is the AGA's logo. On X alone, the video has been viewed 6 million times and it went viral. It made headlines around the country and overseas, and it's still referred to almost daily. Now, this is months into the bombardment of Gaza. This video is important because it suggests that a large group of supporters of Palestine are violence-loving anti-Semites, rather than perhaps just caring about human rights and decades of breaches of international law. Meanwhile, Jewish community members have reported fearing for their life because the video suggests people here in Sydney want them gassed. But let's take a step back and look at the significance of this particular public demonstration. So immediately following the October 7 attack by Hamas, the New South Wales government made the divisive decision to light the Opera House in the Israeli flag's colours in solidarity with Israel. Many Jews and Israelis saw it as an act of solidarity as they mourned the death of hundreds of Israelis killed. But others were asking why the iconic structure has never brandished the Palestinian flag, giving decades of killings of its citizens and ongoing breaches of international law. And also the historically far, far higher Palestinian death toll. So at the same time, Palestinians were told that they couldn't assemble and protest. So that's just a bit of context. But let's get back to the anti-Semitic chants. So Palestinian Action Group organisers quickly came out with a lengthy statement condemning anti-Semitism and acknowledged that, yes, a small number of protesters, they said, who were mainly young teens who said F the Jews, they were quickly asked to leave, and they did. And to quote, "This occurred for less than 1 minute and was not an ongoing chant," the organisers said. So look, it is conceivable that someone or some people said gas the Jews, maybe, but was it chanted loudly, repeatedly, and by a large group of people like this one video that's been shared globally suggests? Or was it even said at all? So protest organisers say they did not hear or see a single chant like this, and they've reviewed over 20 video sources filmed by attendees, and that was found on social media. They found nothing. Look, F the Jews is undoubtedly anti-Semitic, but gas the Jews not only conjures images and trauma from the Holocaust, there's also a legal difference. Experts say F the Jews would not meet the criminal standard, but gas the Jews would be understood as a threat or incitement to kill. So if gas the Jews was said, by all means use the law to prosecute them. But I'm curious about the origins of the loud group chants, as shown in that one video that's been viewed and shared millions of times. Where did it actually come from? Who filmed it? I mean, authorities could try and investigate and answer this super important question, or they could just react, knee-jerk reactions, as Premier Chris Minns did on October 11th, the day after the AJA published that video.
Protests in Sydney last night, I think that they were abhorrent, shocking and abusive, and potentially a crime.
Quickly, it's important to note that despite its name, the Australian Jewish Association is not the representative body for Jews in Australia, but rather a small private group whose leaders are not elected. So the Premier held a press conference and was like soz about the protesters and those chants. He also hinted at cracking down on hate speech. Less than a month later, Minns introduces legislation to Parliament and seeks to fast-track changes to Section 93Z of the Crimes Act. And that's a law that pertains to publicly threatening or inciting violence on the grounds of things like race, religion, sexual orientation, etc. He says existing laws are not working, that they are toothless tigers, adding, "There is naked racism in our community and incitement to violence. So something has to change. Incitement to violence." That's what he said when he was proposing these changes. So I asked Chris Minns' office if the legislation changes are in response to the chants at the Opera House, and also what steps his office took to verify the video which pertains to that inciting violence of the gross gassing variety. Minns' office said that the video is a matter for the police, and that they would not provide comment as to whether the amendments to the Crimes Act were actually influenced by that AGA video. What about New South Wales Police? Well, there was a huge police presence on the night of the Opera House vigil. What did they witness? The barrister and former cop who represented the protest organisers, Mahmoud Hawila, has been meeting with the police for weeks. He says he's personally viewed huge amounts of footage and it doesn't show the chant being said by one person, let alone the masses, so he asked what the police footage found. And on October 26, he was told that police had interviewed witnesses, reviewed internal footage, interviewed their own police, and that there was no such evidence of a chant. But did they come out and hold a press conference or release a press alert to this effect? Nah, don't be silly. Why would they? I also have a copy of minutes from a meeting between New South Wales Deputy Police Commissioner Mal Lanyon and the barrister, and that took place on November 21. And in this meeting, the Deputy Police Commissioner, according to the minutes, says he has no evidence that these words were used, and that the video shared by the Australian Jewish Association is still being investigated. When asked why the police won't say that publicly, the Deputy Commissioner said to pass on his number to any media who wants to hear. I want to hear it, so I called him on his mobile and he answered the phone. We spoke for 6 minutes. Mal said it had to all be off the record, so I can't repeat anything that he actually said. But I did let him know that I have spoken to an independent expert who reviewed that AJA video. It took half a day to come to the conclusion that that audio, those chants did not originate from that video, that they were incongruent with the pictures that they were matched up with. So what is taking New South Wales police so long? And I also put a series of questions in writing, including things like, hey, it's been more than 60 days. What's taking so long to...
So I'll pause it there because I think that was important. The first expert fact check from RMIT Crosscheck, who has, in my opinion, for all sorts of reasons, the check had passed, and I've talked about this on numerous occasions. The first expert fact check said that video and audio don't match up at all.
But it turns out they did.
But now their most recent fact check, again, we're just jumping all over the place here, but the most recent fact check, I'm guessing by the same experts, now says, actually, no, the audio and video is from the same video now, but it's something else that's being said.
It's something else that's being said. And something else you got to point out is she kind of almost, mocks the fact that Jews are saying they're scared because there were chants of gas the Jews, and that would be scary. But now what they're saying in the new fact check is actually the audio is right, but the audio actually says, where's the Jews? So she should still come out. The Jews should still be scared because there's this violent mob that she now agrees were chanting F the Jews and then chanting, where are the Jews? I'm assuming let's go get them. It's pretty clear what that means. I don't think they were out to hug David Adler and co. It's crazy. What's your reaction to that, David, especially now knowing everything we know and their pivots?
Well, let me tell you that what has scared the Jewish community is much broader than just a chant at the Opera House. We have received dozens of threats. There have been assaults. There have been death threats. There have been many reports of incidents, vandalism to Jewish businesses, graffitis, Jewish students intimidated on university campuses and at schools, incidents of bullying. These are the things that are happening in their hundreds. I have personally received a significant death threat, which was investigated by the police. So, you're right that regardless of the words, and one of the things she doesn't address in that video, which is terribly important, is witnesses. There are multiple witnesses who have said that they heard gas the Jews, but it wasn't conducted like an orchestra, and it is indeed possible that gas the Jews was said and where's the Jews was said. So, these things are not mutually exclusive. But in order for the contention that is conveyed by Crikey to be correct, then you would have to say that those that have submitted statutory declarations, those that have made other statements, including the one that we've made public on video, they must be liars. And as you know, if you make a statutory declaration that is untrue, that can have significant penalties. So there is more to it than revealed in the video. And there are other anti-Semitic chants that were made at that event. In fact, early in that video clip was F Israel. There was the one that was possibly gas the Jews, where's the Jews? There was F the Jews. And there was also there on the night a chant in support of Intifada. So, putting all this as a picture, it's a highly threatening, anti-Semitic,
and that's her. That goes straight to her claim. That goes straight to her claim of there's a difference between F the Jews, a legal difference in the definition of F the Jews, which might be bad, but it might not be criminal because it's not a threat, as opposed to, she says, gas the Jews. But then if now they're conceding, they were saying at least F the Jews, where's the Jews? I dare say you're bordering a threat there still. Why are you looking for Jews? But I think from here we can go. Let's go to that breakdown article because I think he brings up some good points. He's an Aussie that moved to Israel and started a website that breaks down a lot of these things. So what was his response to it?
Let me just bring it up.
There's Shari Markson's.
Well, this is the thing.
He's got two, and the next little video down below Shari is, it's only 30 seconds. If you were able to play that.
Play that.
Yep. If it plays.
It doesn't look like it's going to play.
I should play. 1 second.
Open it on Twitter.
My dad and I went down to town hall where there was the pro-Hamas rally happening on the Monday after October 7th. And he decided to wave an Israeli flag, which was awesome. And yeah, then he got mobbed and chased away. And I mean, I was there when they were saying, isn't it great what Hamas is doing? This is totally justified. I heard them chanting, "Gas the Jews." I saw these people. They do not want peace. The people that were there at that rally were anti-Semitic and full of hatred. My dad and I went down to town hall where there was the pro.
So that is an eyewitness going on the record saying she heard it herself in
Correct.
person. And like you say, David, is that it could have been both. It probably was both. Gas Jews, where's the Jews? But at this point, what does it matter? And I want you to go back to his website because he made some decent points about, I guess it's probably going over what we've already said and going over a bit of her history and the fact that there's an agenda there. So she was attacking Shari Markson as in Shari can't be, there's a word I'm looking for.
Objective.
She's not
She's
fair
biased.
and balanced, that she's biased because I dare say, is Shari Jewish? I think that's
Yes.
what she's alluding to. Yeah, so the fact that Shari is pro-Israel and doesn't hide it means that she's biased and we shouldn't trust her.
Yeah, because the Sky News reviewed this footage themselves.
Yeah.
And they came to the conclusion that this was what was
Well,
said.
actually go to her second video because I think this report comes after her second video when do you have that one?
Play, whose second video?
Latouf.
Okay, this one.
Oh, it'll be there, yeah. Play that one.
Hey everyone, I want to respond to a segment on Sky News last night
Yes.
which made a series of miscategorisations about me while also claiming to have verified everything and solved what the government and police have been unable to do. And it's about the unverified video which continues to cause a lot of pain, hate and division. And we still need answers.
you do.
So quickly, I want to reiterate that if Gas the Jews was chanted by the masses more than 2 months ago, it's in the public interest for it to be verified and acted upon. We have hate speech legislation for a reason. Also, if government legislation was rushed off the back of an edited and unverified video, that this needs to be investigated and discussed. But here's how Shari Markson's segment on Sky News started.
Well, we return to this story about the anti-Semitic protests at the Sydney Opera House. We've been reporting on this since it happened on October 8. But now we're seeing that many on the left are rejecting the suggestion that anything anti-Semitic was chanted at all.
Okay, I'm going to stop on the opening line because this is already wrong for 2 reasons. Journalism is about fact-checking. How is this a left or right issue? But sadly, you can always trust Sky News to frame it that way. Also, how and where exactly did I reject that anything anti-Semitic was chanted at all? This is just categorically wrong. And the reason I know this and I'm so confident about it is because I said it on the video that Shari is referring to. Let's get back to the anti-Semitic chants. The Palestinian Action Group organisers quickly came out with a lengthy statement condemning anti-Semitism and acknowledged that, yes, a small number of protesters, they said, who were mainly young teens who said F the Jews, they were quickly asked to leave and they did. Back to Shari.
Just this week, Crikey published an article claiming that the footage of the protests had been edited.
Again, not true. What we did at Crikey
Yep.
was report that we do not have all of the answers. We have
No,
questions
you
that
claimed
need to
it
be
was
answered.
edited.
We reported that police have still not been able to verify that Gas the Jews was chanted after analysing dozens of videos from social media, other protesters, and even police body cam footage. Also, that an independent fact-check unit at RMIT University shared a report with a number of conclusions which point to the video that went viral
That it
having
was
been
edited.
edited. If Shari can't comprehend the things coming out of my mouth, maybe she'll believe the verification expert from RMIT who spoke to ABC's PM program last night.
So normally when you have different clips and also they look like they're filmed from slightly different angles, probably by different people using different devices, in that case, you should have some discrepancies in the quality, volume, etc. of the sound. But what we can see
Pause
from the
that a second.
waveform is that some
Because the funniest thing from all of this is, so they use RMIT, as we personally know, is and funny that it's because RMIT has their agenda against Sky, because Sky got them removed from
That's right.
Meta.
Yeah. There are a lot of like little
Yeah,
things
yeah,
happening here.
yeah. So, but the funny thing is now, so keep knowing what we now know is actually the RMIT fact checker was wrong, and they concede that. What they're saying is now you just misheard it. So this whole shtick that she's doing here is not only irrelevant to the truth, it's actually, it just shows how she was driven by an agenda. They wanted to come to a certain outcome. They were saying, here, look at our expert who justifies what we're saying.
Yeah, the video was edited.
The video was edited. You weren't only implying, you were saying essentially it's edited, and you're saying, don't take my word for it, is these amazing RMIT fact checkers are saying it's edited. And today, only hours ago, they're saying it wasn't
The
edited.
video is not edited, but they're saying something else.
Exactly.
The original one of the original video did have some splicing.
No.
it
But
came-
they're talking about the audio. They're talking about the audio being manipulated, not.
we didn't. Okay, manipulation's a different thing to editing.
No, they're talking when they're talking about the editing. They're talking about the editing of the sounds, and that's what, and they're now conceding wasn't done. They're just saying essentially the microphone didn't pick it up well enough. This is what they actually said.
Yeah, that's my reading of it anyway.
Yeah, that's the way. I don't know how you can read that any other way. Okay, maybe keep going there.
the waveforms are very similar across multiple clips. So that's a little bit strange. You do need to access the raw file in order to be able to analyze, say, how many audio tracks are in that video and separate that from the visual file, etc.
And accessing this raw file is exactly what we've tried to do again and again. Nobody can figure out who edited it or where the audio comes from because the Australian Jewish Association, which shared the video, won't return my emails, messages or calls. Here are some other untrue statements made by Shari.
Well, one of the authors of that article, Antoinette Lattouf, is also in a video that she published to her social media trying to suggest that people didn't say anything anti-Semitic or deeply offensive at all.
Hi, I'm that author, and given I'm investigating misinformation and possibly disinformation, I don't want to be taken out of context.
Ooh.
So here is exactly what I said. Look, F the Jews is undoubtedly anti-Semitic, but Gas the Jews not only conjures images and trauma from the Holocaust, there's also a legal difference. Shari also went on to say this.
Going on there, well, I've obtained the raw footage from the protest.
Really? Firstly, this video is different to the one which AJA posted that went viral. So where did this one come from? And from what I can see, all that it has in common is that it shows the backs of people's heads, no lips moving and no close-ups. Shari failed to provide any information about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry for snorting in the microphone, but there's just she's such
this-
a gaslighter.
Yeah, I mean, this standard of proof thing that's happening, like, it's a bit interesting because typically, I would usually, expect the media to kind of vet these things, like Sky News, for instance, before they put this stuff out there. And we don't always say, "Oh, we can't see what their lips are saying," so that must not be said in the video. It's been edited and digitally added in. It's not the raw footage anymore. So obviously, Sky News is playing some type of raw footage that had that audio, but then she's saying, "Well, we can't see the lips moving." So is it authentic?
really happening?
Is it really happening? Because we can't see the lips and it's backs of
She,
people's
she
heads.
used she used the word disinformation, possibly disinformation. Now, so everyone watching should be clear, disinformation is deliberately making something false. Misinformation is accidental. So if you're raising the possibility of disinformation, you are raising an allegation of lying. You are, that is a serious allegation. There is zero evidence of fabrication because it didn't occur. There is none. Now, you can argue about what the actual word was when you put your ears to it, but they have had to backpedal on this disinformation or fabrication or artificial intelligence. That is gone. So even raising that undermines the credibility of what she's going to try to say.
Yep. Finish her video.
Which authority, or better still, authorities verified this video? And please allow me to reiterate, if this was chanted in unison as that AJA video depicts, this is incredibly serious and it must be dealt with. But if it wasn't, what it is at best is misinformation, which is incredibly harmful, but at worst, disinformation, where a bad actor is at play. It is the job of journalists to ask questions when social cohesion is so shaky. So it's important also then to note that Shari and Sky News didn't bother reaching out to me and asking for a reply or for comment from me before creating a segment of half-truths and hysteria. But honestly, what would I know? Anyway, the AJA won't talk to me either, but they do post about me and refer to me as a journalist in inverted commas. Perhaps I would be a more reliable, independent and trusted journalist if I spoke at the Women's International Zionist Organization event this September, like Shari did. Or better still, if I attended an all-expenses-paid junket to Israel, like Shari did. And I want to quote Ron Borman. He's a former IDF soldier who's now critical of the Israeli regime. He describes the intentions of these junkets as to wine, dine, and anti-Palestine. We can already see the harmful effects of misinformation and race-based hate. We do not need any more of it. Thanks.
So, the projection in that, everything she literally said about Shari can be said about her the other way.
Yeah, potentially.
She is an Arab who has her agenda, who has made clear where she stands on this issue, which is fine. She's allowed to have that. That's completely understandable. But to use that then against Sharia and say that that undermines her ability to be fair and balanced or to present the facts, well, hold on a second. If that applies to Shari, darling, I think that applies to you too. No?
Yeah, I'm just thinking I'm probably never going to accept a trip to Israel.
You're not going to accept?
No.
Wine, dine, and anti-Palestine. I don't actually think that's what they do. You should go on one of them and see if they anti-Palestine with you. I dare say.
Look, there was a lot of speculation in that. I mean, she was just talking about misinformation, disinformation, and about journalism and all this kind of stuff. And she ended it with a lot of misinformation, like a lot of speculation about what happens in these trips, or what the potential is for journalists to get corrupted. Australian journalists working
to be corrupted
on Sky News. Now when we look at Shari Marks, and you can only look at it through that lens for almost everything. The way that she's represented her, and I think that's kind of unfair to her.
So that was all a few days ago. Today is. Yeah, there was nothing. There was what's his name went through it. He pointed out, I think, a lot of the things that we've.
Well, this is the one from today. Cameron Wilson from Crikey sharing. This is today, an hour or so before we went live. So new video and independent audio report and interviews with forensic audio experts, the same experts, has cast doubt on whether video footage shows pro-Palestine protesters chanting "Gas the Jews." And what is what they're saying? Ben, you just come off the screen for 1 second, Ben. I'll just give me a second to pull that up.
Because just that tweet makes it look like the whole video was still fake, but they're not saying that now.
No, I'll bring up the findings now. Benji, you can switch back. So these are the findings. If you can see, these are the findings. So, does any part of the audio recordings have the crowd or any individual chant "gas the Jews"? There is no instance within the audio recording where the crowd or any specific individuals can be heard chanting the phrase "gas the Jews" based on my professional analysis of the recording. With reference to this is the second part. With reference to the part of the video that is subtitled "gas the Jews," are you able to tell what words are used? Regarding the segment of the video subtitled as "Gas the Jews," my professional assessment indicates that the words being vocalized are more accurately interpreted as "Where's the Jews?" rather than "Gas the Jews." So this is the latest findings that Crikey is.
So again, what is important here to note is they've backpedaled and pivoted from this being an AJA AI created, edited video to make it look like they were saying one thing in the chants, to now going, no, we accept the video is real. The raw video is real, even though it was taken from behind, and we don't see the lips moving.
Yeah.
But what you're in fact hearing is, where's the Jews, not gas the Jews.
Yes.
What's your reaction to that, David Adler?
Well, we relied on the witnesses. We weren't there. So in order for there to have been no gas the Jews, then you would have had to have all these witnesses who had provided stat decks lying. So, I'm not saying one thing or another.
Doesn't matter. That doesn't matter if they said gas the Jews to where's the Jews.
Well, it may well be that multiple things were said, because it's hard to believe that all these witnesses are wrong. So you've got to give witnesses testimony some degree of credibility also. I can't make a definitive ruling on the latest information, but we relied on the witnesses, and as you normally do.
I guess the question is, does it make you as a community leader, unelected apparently, but I don't think any of those Jewish community leaders are. Anyway, that's a whole other subject, but that was a nice little dig at you. I saw she had. Does it make the Jewish community feel any better knowing that this mob of young anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, because this was only 2 days, this was before Israel was striking back, so these were people that were celebrating the actual attacks, no matter how she likes to frame it. Does it make the Jewish community feel any better that they potentially didn't say gas the Jews, they were just looking for Jews to, I don't know what they were looking for Jews to do, but after screaming F the Jews and F Israel, and then they were screaming, apparently, where's the Jews? Should that make Jews feel better about what happened that day?
Look, it was pretty horrific all around. F the Jews, F Israel. If it was gas the Jews, that's horrific. If it was where's the Jews, that's just about as bad, because it's like hunting for Jews. But the big thing that worries the community is what we've seen in the last 6-8 weeks, which is an explosion of anti-Semitic incidents right across the board. Threats, some assaults, the harassment online, the bullying of Jewish students at university and schools, the calls to boycott Jewish businesses, some death threats. I mean, all these things are what's worrying the Jewish community. The big explosion of anti-Semitism, and it's been a game changer for the community. I want to put one positive thing in there, seeing we're talking about anti-Semitism broadly, because we have had many messages from ordinary Australians offering support. Recently, the largest Christian political organisation in this country, the Australian Christian Lobby, ACL, launched a campaign to oppose anti-Semitism. And for the Jewish community, which at times has felt quite vulnerable and quite alone, this is very heartwarming. And one of the things that they've done is that they've launched within that campaign an online petition. And anybody who is opposed to anti-Semitism, I'm not normally a great advocate of online petitioning, but anybody who is opposed to anti-Semitism, I'd urge them to go to the ACL website, which is simply acl.org.au. There's a link there to their petition, and show your support. It costs nothing. It takes all of about 1 minute to do. So that is a positive initiative as a consequence to some of these terrible events.
Yeah, look, I appreciate when I see people that stand up for the Jewish community at the moment and stand up for Israel and stand up for what's right, even though it's seems to be, unpopular in so many circles, whether it's the far left, far right, or Islamic communities. It is heartwarming to see those that do stand up. So what was that website again? acl.org.au, where they can sign that petition?
Correct.
Amazing. Now, just to go back to, I'm trying to get my head around why Crikey? So why these two journalists, which I have my own suspicion as to why, but why these two journalists are so focused in on this story when, one, the organisers of the actual event never really doubted it. No one was questioning it. In fact, they were condemning those that did it. But why these two journalists felt the need to fight so hard to first paint AJA as disinformation, and the video was fake, and now have pivoted to it just being where's the Jews, whilst instead of what the story at this moment should be, if you're actually conceding that where's the Jews is what they said, the story should be like, oh no, there were this mob of angry Jew-hating men who were looking to hunt Jews. Instead of that being the story, their focus is on, you see, they never said gas the Jews. There's no proof they said gas the Jews. Why is that the focus?
Look, it reminds me of, just to go back to around another debate that we had with RMIT, these fact checkers, which was around whether the Uluru statements was 1 page or 18 pages. It feels like that because at the end of those fact checks and at the end of that discussion, it almost didn't matter anymore. And depending on who you were and what you wanted to hear or whatever it is, you hear these things. So I feel like what I saw when this particular fact check came out, so many people were sharing it, saying, "See, there is no anti-Semitism.
The Jews make everything up.
They're making things up. It's being exaggerated. It's all fake. It's all lie. They're using AI." And I was thinking, look, I've seen a lot of these type of comments. I haven't personally witnessed, gas the Jews being said, but I saw it on that video, and I saw that witnesses were saying that they heard it. Then I saw all these kind of fact checks, and even listening to that, you can almost hear what you want to hear when you listen to these things. You can't know for sure. So there is a lot of doubt now created around this particular incident. And I think in a way that doubt is what they're trying to create with these type of fact checks, because that doubt is enough. Because if you want to,
why do they want to create that doubt? Why does Crikey, why do you think Crikey wants to create that doubt about whether gas the Jews was said? And even if they're admitting now, I guess they've been forced to admit that something was said, whatever was said. But now when it is, where's the Jews? So when grown men are hunting Jews, these are not teens. In that video, it wasn't little teens like she was trying to claim. They were grown men hunting Jews. Why is it so important for Crikey to have that doubt at this point?
I mean,
I'll tell you why. What do you know? Do you have a theory, Dr. David Adler, as to why?
Look, I can't, I'm not getting into their heads.
I don't think you have to get into their heads. You just have to look at history, and you have to look at what's going on even within the context of the terrorist attack on October 7th. It is modern day Holocaust denial, and it's happening again and again. And this is just another example of it. And the crazy thing here is that it used to just be the crazy, the fringe right and, a sadly large proportion of the Islamic community that used to question, the numbers of the Holocaust, minimize the Holocaust or deny it happened totally. And after October 7, we've seen that repeat itself both on the left and the right, as well as a broad part of the Islamic community. And I feel like this falls into that. This whole questioning of whether Gas the Jews was chanted that day falls into the whole thing of denying the attacks happened or denying the severity of the attacks, minimizing it to say the Jews are just complaining. Within Israel, it's the Jews wanting a reason to go into Gaza. I've been into Gaza. No one wants to go into Gaza. And then on top of that, here it's to say to people like you, shut up and stop whinging, stop being a victim. These kids didn't say anything like that. They were just peacefully hunting Jews. You crybaby.
Well, as I said, Avi, we're much more concerned about the broader trends in the community. One ugly rally does not in itself alter the whole environment, but it is symptomatic of what's occurring right across society at the moment, and that troubles us deeply. The impact in the educational facilities, in the schools, in the unis, the harassment online, as we've said, I mean, it's going around in circles a bit, but we're very concerned about the broader explosion of anti-Semitism right across the community.
But I dare say, on top of that, and I think we're coming to an end here. I blame. Yeah, I agree with you. All of that is concerning, but who's allowing that to flourish? In fact, who's fanning those flames are outlets like Crikey. Outlets like Crikey that are minimizing and denying what is happening, and those who pretend to care so much about minorities are kicking the smallest minority in the world while they're down. And remember, that happened again. I think people need to be reminded that happened on the 9th of October. That was before Israel defended itself after that horrific attack. There was not one person in Gaza. There was not one Israeli in Gaza at that time. It was just after the massacre of Jews, after the stories were just getting out of what had happened. I was on a flight to Israel at that time. It was insane. And now groups like Crikey, activists, bloggers like Crikey, who then take people like Latouf for some sort of legitimacy, because remember, she works for the mainstream media. She works for SBS. She works for ABC. She works for Channel 10 studio. I think she was the head editor. I remember when she wrote articles on me in the past. She was a senior editor at Channel 10. So they've taken somebody who is supposed to carry some sort of weight to add on to it. And really the whole thing was to create this question mark, which only fuels what David Adler is talking about here. And I can say that as somebody that sees it from the inside, and somebody that I've seen over the last 2 months, the amount of hate that I couldn't believe. I remember a few months ago, David, I before October 7, I was one of those Jews who used to often tell Jews to stop complaining about anti-Semitism. You're seeing, you're waking up and you're seeing anti-Semitism everywhere. Most people don't. And sadly, I've been proven wrong. Since October 7, I've seen more anti-Semitism than I've seen in my entire life. And I even hated using the word anti-Semitism before. I prefer to call it Jew hatred, and also the Arabs like to use that technicality that they're Semites, even though that's not where the word was coined. But it's the Jew hatred that we've seen since October 7 has been insane. But at the same time, we have seen, I've been able to see who our real friends are in this period as well. I've seen both commentators activists or political, politicians from around the globe. Some that I used to like, and I look at it and I go, you're just joining the mob for the clicks or, for whatever reason. And then I've also seen those that have stood up for their beliefs being consistent, no matter whether they were on the left or the right. And you think, thank you. Good on you for actually standing up. But it made me realize how the Holocaust was possible, how it all happened.
We have a promotional video on our YouTube channel, which was made last year. And in it, I make a statement that in a different context, but the statement is that whatever you think about these issues, there is nothing in Australia remotely like the Holocaust. I wouldn't make that statement anymore. We are seeing things in Australia that are reminiscent of the 1930s in Germany. We're seeing stickers on Jewish businesses and vandalism. We're seeing calls to boycott Jewish businesses. We're seeing harassments in the community against the Jewish community. So that's why there was on the front page of The Australian, famously now, a letter co-signed by 100 Holocaust survivors warning about these trends. Now, we need to take it very, very seriously. History teaches us that a society that has a rise in anti-Semitism is a society in decline. It's this level of intolerance and hatred that is directed at the Jewish community is something that we need all reasonable Australians to help oppose.
Yeah, look, I mean, as an outsider, obviously, as an Australian who's not, Jewish or Israeli by any type of connection like that, I'm for the first time sensing what this is kind of like for the Jewish community. But I'm also finding, we're at a point in this country where obviously we have people from everywhere, and there are Palestinians and people from that region who are worried about what's happening in Israel, in Gaza right now. And I think they have every right to voice those concerns in a manner that's attuned with our Australian values in terms of how we, protest, the things that we can say about each other, the way that we can make different members of our community feel. But I think all those boundaries have been blurred. It almost feels like it's okay as a non, even just for me, I can just go and say whatever I like about Jews right now, and it's okay. It's welcomed. It's celebrated,
and you'll be protected by Crikey and those like Crikey. They will protect you. Those that have spent years calling everybody else Nazis over things that were clearly not. You got to remember. I don't know if you recall back in 2017-18 period, if I'm getting the dates right, where there was those big anti-Islamic protests, and remember there was a group of them who got charged for doing a mock beheading outside a mosque. There was the United Patriots, whatever they were called. There's some lunatic group, right? And they did this mock beheading outside a mosque, and they all got charged with what was it? Because I remember I was covering their hearings, and they got charged with these hate laws that hadn't really been used before. But to me, the contrast is because people like Crikey, and I think Cam himself did a lot of reports on this, pushing it, going, yeah, you need to essentially charge these activists for doing this mock beheading because it's ridiculing and it's causing fear to the Muslim community. And here we are, what is it, 5 years later, and the same journalists that, and fine, you can condemn that. I personally, I thought there's freedom of speech needs to stop when your line of freedom of speech is as soon as you're inciting violence or threatening anyone else. In that case, I think it could have been argued that it was a mock beheading to, they were trying to make a point as to what they were scared was being, whatever it is. But if you're going to condemn that, then surely 5 years later, when groups are running around, groups of men and much larger groups than that were outside that mosque that time, bigger groups who were chanting "F the Jews." So there was no one chanting "F the Muslims" outside that church that day, that mosque. F the Jews and where are the Jews? So they're literally hunting for Jews. And your only response is to condemn the Jewish organization that brought it to people's attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a problem. I think it's set a certain standard in the way that we can talk about ethnic conflicts in this country. The way that we can, because something's happening overseas, all of a sudden now we have to understand it in that light, which applies to some context overseas, which I don't think it translates over to the way that we should behave in this country. And it goes to this video that I quickly just want to play, Benji, which is the most disturbing element of all of this is, I think, the indoctrination of students by teachers. This particular teacher from, I think, Paran High School, science teacher, whatever it is, I think it's okay to want to show empathy to what's happening overseas and teach students about these things, but glorifying acts of terrorism and supporting organizations like Hamas, Australian teachers to Australian students, I think crosses the line.
To be fair, I think he's Malaysian, and I think he's on a visa here for teachers because they're importing the education system.
Let me play the video.
Play it.
Hamas is doing exactly what they have to do. Hamas is doing exactly what they have to do.
Now, forgetting everything that's going on right now, I don't believe that Australian teachers should be saying anything of that sort to their students.
What exactly is Hamas doing? I think that's what's important to point out. What is he actually saying? And I've seen people going, because that was from a Channel 9 report. They're like, oh, where's the rest of his speech? I don't think the rest of the speech matters. If a high school science teacher...
I've seen the rest of the speech. They put it up last night before they quickly deleted it. And the rest of the speech actually shows that he acknowledges that, these kind of acts in as a resistance, any type of act as a resistance is justified.
Oh, even the rape.
Well, Hamas is doing the right thing. So regardless of any of that, this is what these teachers are saying that should be discussed in the Australian classroom. And I don't believe that for a second. That's not who we are. This is like, these things are alien to us in this country to be normalized in such a fashion. But this is what's being discussed on our streets. And I think that goes further than, anything that's happening right now in this country, at least.
That little statement gets very close to showing support for a prescribed terrorist organisation, and I don't want to express a legal view, but it is an offence in Australia to actively support prescribed terrorist organisations.
Well,
under
he's
the
on it. Yeah.
Commonwealth Criminal Code. That's where it is.
Well, I hope, if not for the sake of the Jewish community, that this educator is held accountable. I hope for his students, and I know that there's a number of, because I think it's in Paran, there's a number of Jewish co-workers, other teachers, and Jewish students in his school. And if he is indeed on that special visa for teachers, so we've imported this educator to corrupt our children, I think he should be charged and deported straight away. There's no two ways about that. We don't need to import terrorism here. We have enough problems as it is. On that note, what do you want to add, David?
The 860 visas to bring people from Gaza. I wrote a piece in the Spectator magazine basically saying that it was impossible in the time period to have done adequate security screening, and there are major risks of importing terrorist supporters, if not people prepared to do terrorist acts. So it's
all you got to look is at their own polling. I think there was an Arab poll recently that from Gaza that showed 75% support Hamas. That's 3/4. So you're going to find that most people you bring, I don't know how they're choosing this 860. That's they're going to be taking most of the ones if they're somehow finding the 1 in 4 that doesn't support Hamas. to bring them into Australia and somehow magically think that they're going to drop their view. This is not just anti-Israel. Hamas is an
very it's a very
Islamist group. Their
complicated.
charter is very similar to ISIS. So to think that somehow they're going to be rehabilitated, I think you need to pose yourself the one question is why no Arab nation is taking them? Why Egypt? I find this is the mind-boggling part. Why Egypt has a siege on Gaza itself that nobody wants to talk about. It is an uncomfortable truth for even the Arab world. You have the owner of Purgatory right now. He's in Egypt crying about my tweet about him apparently, but he's in Egypt packing what are they called, the packages for, what'd you say, right? Not rations but support, aid packages for Gaza, which is bizarre because half his or the majority of his fans all deny that any aid is getting into Gaza. So I don't know why is he packing aid that's not going in. But he's there in Egypt doing that, close to the border, and he's not asking. He's in Australia protesting Israel, but not once have I seen him protest Egypt for also closing its border to Gaza. And we know it's no secret as to why they're closing their border to Gaza. It's because they don't want terrorists coming into their territory. They've had those dramas before. But here we are in Australia. We are geniuses, and we're going to bring them here, and everything is going to be just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I want to put this to you because you brought all this up now. There's this kind of claim that, what the Jewish community is doing in Australia and, like, for instance, yourself and stuff is saying that any criticism of Israel
that's not true.
Is anti-Semitism. Are these protests and all this kind of stuff that are you trying to stop all this happening? I'll put this to you, David. Do you want this all to stop because you don't want any criticism of Israel? Is this what this is about?
That's nonsense. That's nonsense, Rukshan. Israel can be criticised just like any country in the world can be criticised. And indeed, that's the test. If you're criticising Israel on the same level as any other country, that is by definition not anti-Semitism. But if you take it to a whole new level, an obsession, and you're seeing things that are there. I mean, a good example is people are concerned, as they should be, about civilian deaths in Gaza. It is a complicated combat area where people are used as human shields. But when there are hundreds of thousands of Arab Palestinians killed in Syria, no one seems to mind. When Pakistan at the moment is expelling about 1.7 million Afghani Muslims, no one seems to mind. So the test is, are you treating Israel in the same way as any other member of the international community? And you can make your criticisms in that context. Or are you, doing something so completely different to the world's only Jewish state? You can cross the line with obsessive, different level criticism, and we unfortunately have seen a lot of that since the 7th of October.
Have you, Avi? I want to put this to you. You were there, you're here, you're seeing this evolve into something like David mentioned. Obviously, the civilian casualties. It's very hard to reconcile that with, you can't. It's not something that you can reconcile really. Some of the things that we're seeing coming out of Gaza, especially. Do you think that Israel and the IDF in particular, this call for a ceasefire, it is something that is warranted now, considering what we're seeing happening in Gaza?
Okay, so this is a conversation that we can have, and I can have that with anyone if you come at it in good faith, which I know.
No, I'm coming at it in good faith.
I know you do
because what we're seeing right now.
It's horrible.
Yeah, as an Australian, like I get the protest, I get the outrage, I get all of that stuff. I don't understand all the hatred and the anti-Semitism and all of that kind of stuff. As an Australian, I think that's wrong, and I think we shouldn't be seeing any of that. But I understand at some level the criticism of the Israeli government and the IDF. It's the same way that we would criticize the Australian army or the US army if we were to see similar things. I get that's my way I'm
So
coming at it from.
I would put it the way I look at it is that after the attack that we saw and a mission was declared to get rid of Hamas, that has to be achieved. So Hamas needs to surrender, or Israel has to get rid of him. Is what we're seeing horrible? It is horrific to see what we're seeing there. But in the same vein, what we saw at the end of World War II, what ended World War II was some horrific. The Allied forces also, look at Dresden, for example, where they bombed Dresden, and a lot more civilians than what we're seeing in Gaza were killed there as well as collateral damage. Are we going to say that shouldn't have happened because the collateral damage was too high? I don't think anyone legitimate is going to say that we should have let Nazism flourish or continue to go unchecked and not fought to win that war by any means. It is a sad reality of war, every war. That is how it is, and I think Israel goes above and beyond, and anybody that knows the terrain would understand that, if Israel really was this genocidal state as these not in good faith protesters marching down the street, well, some are naive, but there are many that know that Israel does what it can to protect civilians in really difficult circumstances, because it is just impossible. If Israel really wanted to genocide Gaza, do you seriously think it would be that hard? They could do it within 24 hours, but they don't want to. All they're doing is trying to protect civilian life because it does not serve their best interest on any level to hurt civilians, let alone just the PR level. It destroys Israel on a PR position, and for Hamas, it does exactly the opposite. That's why they use the civilians to protect themselves, because it causes that outrage around the world for people to condemn Israel for really what they are doing. It is a double war crime, as they say. The first war crime was Hamas's attack on Israel, targeting civilians, men, women, children, kidnapping little babies, raping women, putting babies in ovens. I went there, I saw that. That was a war crime. Their second war crime was to retreat in and hide amongst the civilians and stop civilians from getting away, to ensure as many civilians get killed as possible. It is heartbreaking to see that. But what is the other option? There is no other option. I can't see another option. And anyone that I put it to, I say to them, what is the other option? If it is someone in good faith, they sometimes say, I don't know, it's just not what is happening now. Well, you explain that to every Israeli who lived through the worst day, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. The worst loss of life on Jews since the Holocaust. You're talking about a tiny minority. How many Jews are there in the world, David Adler? I think there's about 16 million.
Maybe even a little less, but
even a little less.
16 is okay.
So you're thinking, and how many Muslims are there in the world? Some 2.9, is there? 2.4 or 2.9 billion, is it?
Around 2 billion. I don't know the exact.
So just so you understand the proportionate difference.
Look, I get all of that.
On all of it, you have this army, this world against the Jews that want nothing less than the annihilation of the Jewish state. They can pretend as much as they want. They don't. When they chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And then they try, when you talk to one that's a little smarter and he goes, no, we're talking about Palestinians. I'm like, oh, hold on, Habibi. So why, when you're chanting it, don't you say from the river to the sea, Palestinians will be free? They don't chant that. They chant Palestine, because for them it is not about the people. It is about freeing the land of the Jews. And we know that, and they know that. And the thing is, where it came from was about the annihilation of the Jews. So if you're willing to have a conversation in good faith and get and understand that, two things can be true at once. You can feel the pain and the suffering of the civilians. But you can also say, hold on a second, who's responsible for that? Is it the government of Gaza, who are supposed to be protecting their civilians? And all they had to do to protect their civilians was, one, not attack Israel, or two, stop now, surrender, give back the hostages, stop firing rockets, lay down your arms.
Yeah.
That's all that has to happen. And if you're seriously sitting there and you're saying, well, Israel should just retreat, leave their hostages in there, nobody's talking, leave the hostages.
No, it's more so like, are they capable of this? Because, we saw Israel, for instance, and I know we're taking up a bit of time here, but we saw Israel recently, the IDF themselves admitted to killing 3 of the hostages.
Yes. And,
Right?
and that just proves that it is a disaster. It is hard in there.
But that happened. Like, when you read the context of how that happened, you question the capability of Israel to do what they're doing in a way that protects civilian life. Like, I understand that argument that people are making.
No, exactly. It is very hard, and the fact is that Israel wasn't even made the mistake against their own people. But again, what do you do? So you can't. They're going in there to fight Hamas, and civilians are getting caught up in the crossfire by large numbers. And even Israeli civilians are getting caught up in the crossfire. And I guarantee you, Israeli soldiers are going to get caught up in the crossfire. That's what happens in war. That is what happens in war. And it's sad, and I wish it could end today. But the only way it can end is if Hamas is defeated, to ensure that October 7 that they promised should happen and would happen again if they could, doesn't happen again.
Yeah. I mean, I see very little criticism of Hamas in these pro-Palestinian.
It needs to make you ask why.
And that's something that I noticed and I see, and it confuses me, because obviously there is this. If you're a resistance force, I'm just putting it in the terms that it's been put, and you go into this adventure, this act that you're doing of taking on, Israel, for instance, the IDF, and you believe it's all legitimate. You're doing all of this stuff, and you do this attack, but then you can't defend yourselves. You can't defend your civilian population. Yet you continue. Now, in the West, Western militaries would most likely have surrendered by now in with these kind of numbers, with what we're seeing, but they persist. And outside observers, again, who are not connected to this conflict in that manner, look at this and wonder why they do persist to continue, if the numbers that they're claiming that of the loss of life of the civilian population is so high. Why would you continue to?
Firstly, Rukshan, they don't care about the civilians. I mean, if they cared about,
that's what it feels like for me. Like they should be surrendering at least. In this instance,
apart from billions of dollars being taken by the leaders overseas, the Hamas leadership in Qatar has, there's 3 of them that are billionaires, multi-billionaires, and the amount of money that they have spent on terrorist infrastructure, more and more of the tunnels are being discovered and exposed and destroyed. You're talking about many billions of dollars in infrastructure for terrorism exclusively, rather than building homes and hospitals and schools, etc. Look, Avi gave the example of how the Allies had to conduct a campaign towards the end of World War II. We have more recent examples with opponents that are closer to Hamas. The way that the US went after Al-Qaeda after 9/11. And you remember that President Bush at the time demonstrated shock and awe with the amount of bombing that was occurring. And of course, more recently still, ISIS was essentially crushed by the coalition. There are still little pockets around, but huge campaigns were required in order to defeat an enemy which is so fanatical that the ordinary values of life by which we judge things from a Western perspective don't apply. So that's what Israel, unfortunately, is dealing with. You can't apply Western logic to the mission that Israel has. You're dealing with fanatics, barbarians who, not the people, but Hamas, who are prepared to implement barbaric tactics of the likes of which would shock the average person and should shock the average person. And yeah, there are going to be significant civilian casualties despite the best efforts of Israel to minimise those. They've made many warnings. They've escorted civilians from one place to another on occasion. But Avi's right, the way this will end quickly with a lower number of civilian casualties would be for Hamas to release the hostages, put down its weapons, essentially surrender, and then we can talk about a future for Gaza.
Absolutely. On that note, I want to firstly thank you, Dr. David Adler, for joining us tonight. And for those of you viewers at home, remember, if you want to catch up with any of these episodes, theopposition.show. This is going to be our last episode for this year. We'll kick off again at some in the first, probably towards the end of January. We'll keep you all posted. We've got exciting plans for next year, unless Rukshan goes back to his Zionist ways.
No comment. Guys, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you again, Dr. David Adler, for your time today. Of course, I'm seeing a lot of comments and there's a lot of things that people are raising, and we really wanted to specifically cover that issue with that chant and some of the anti-Semitism that we're seeing. But I think we can pick up on some of these issues at a later point, because I do have a lot of questions for you, actually. I do have questions.
Why are you pointing fingers?
No, I'm just saying I have questions.
Stop pointing at me. That's rude.
And but look, there are many things happening, obviously, that we will be covering when we come back, and many other guests that we'll be having on,
Inshallah,
going down into the future. So thank you, everyone. If you want, I think what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought there. You can close it off.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Theopposition.show. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.